You could license your voice to Apple for a new Siri voice.
Sounds good. I
Right. So
appreciate
it
that.
looks, sorry to cut you guys off, but it looks like we are live. So let me just go ahead and start sharing my screen real quick. And yeah, just so everyone knows, we're just talking about Damien's radio voice and how we're gonna start broadcasting that and doing recordings. All right. So can you guys see my screen? Yeah, we're good. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and present. All right, well, good morning, everybody. My name is Monica Rojas. I am the Membership and Inclusion Specialist at Palm Beach Tech. And today we have Todd with Boca Code. He's a founder and lead instructor today giving our workshop on figuring out what tech career is best for you. All right, thanks for joining us, Todd. So if you don't know who we are Palm Beach Tech, and we're a tech nonprofit building South Florida into a tech hub. So that's our ultimate mission. You've probably seen it everywhere. And a hashtag we like to use is hashtag building SoFlo. All right, and this is our community creed. So we really try to be an inclusive community, people first, and we want our community to engage in a collaborative way. And obviously don't sell it to people and kind of network and, you know, build South Florida into a tech hub. All right, so yeah, this is a little bit more about who we are. Like I said, we are a nonprofit and we have about 200 corporate members. So we have a lot of startups. We also have Fortune 500 companies, and we have dozens of partners throughout South Florida. If you look below, these are just a few of them, like 1909 and FAU Tech Runway. And we recently expanded to Miami, so we have a lot of Miami partners as well. Shout out to 305. And at the end of the day, we're building an inclusive tech community, driving innovation and growth. All right, and yeah, these are just a few of our current members. For example, Boca Code with Todd Albert, and then we have, I know we saw someone from DSS, Scott, shout out to your company. And we recently had UKG join us. And yeah, if you could just tell, it's very diverse, and we all have that one mission in common, which is to build South Florida to a tech hub. So that's something I'm excited about. And just this is a little bit more about our membership. We have weekly newsletters. We gave our speaker or our company speaking opportunities like this one. We do member spotlights, highlighting some of the awesome stuff that you guys are doing within our community. We have exclusive peer groups for kind of just leaders to network, learn, and share together. And we're working on offering member benefits and discounts. So if you guys ever have any questions, please feel free to check out palmbeachtech.org. All right, so yeah, this is our events calendar. Unfortunately, this is the last event we have of the year. And then stay tuned for 2021. We have a lot of awesome things coming up. And just so you guys know, we have about 4 events per week. It's either the Tech Talk, which is a quick little 30-minute talk and networking session every Monday night. We have our community coffees on Tuesday mornings at 8 a.m., bringing in different thought leaders to share and connect. And then we have our podcast where we highlight the awesome people in South Florida that have done amazing things, like, you know, our different startup founders and CEOs and all of that. And then our workshops where we educate our tech talent and kind of engage our community through that. And yeah, if you don't know, we do have a resume distributor. If you want to go ahead and submit your resume, if you're looking for a new job, you go on our career board and you can also see who's hiring. Or you could just listen to Todd's workshop this morning too, because that could help. All right, so if you haven't done so already, just join our Slack at southfloridatech.com/Slack. All right, so it looks like we are done for today. I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic to Todd. And yeah, Todd, you can go ahead and share your screen and do your thing.
Thank you, Monica. I appreciate that. You guys should be able to see my screen, I think, now, right? Awesome. So I want to make this, I want to make this talk a little bit more interactive than most. There's going to be some of the slides coming up where, there's some tech professionals here on this call that, I'd love for them to chime in and add to as we come up. But what the focus of this talk is the right career tech for you. And my name, as Monica said, I'm Todd Albert. I'm the founder and lead instructor one of the lead instructors here at Boca Code, I should say. One of my other lead instructors is right there, not on this Zoom call, and Michelle Bakels. And we are very proud members of Palm Beach Tech, and also on the mission to help not just build South Florida into a tech community. South Florida is a tech community, but to help see it grow and expand, and to hopefully help train and supply some of the talent for that here at Boca Code. So I wanted to start off today with a story. I would say it's a funny story, but my co-founder Alan will say, "You tell us a story, I'll tell you if it's funny." So you guys could tell me if you think it's a funny story or not. But when I was in high school, when I was a junior in high school, I didn't want to go to college because I had no idea what I wanted to do as a career, which is kind of funny looking back, because I learned how to code in 1982. And by 1991, I had already written my first like full-blown arcade game. By 1992, I was already like one of the state champs in coding for high school competitions. And so I went to my guidance counselor and was like, I don't know what to do. I don't want to go to college because I don't know what I want to do as a career. So he gave me this aptitude test, and the aptitude test came back, and I tried to find a copy of it last night because I have it at my house. But this aptitude test came back and said I should be a software engineer. And of course I was like, no, because I was an angsty teenage boy and frankly quite an idiot at that time. Maybe I still am to some degree, but less so for sure. And it took me 20 years to actually get into that career. And I took a detour and became a college professor, climate scientist, studied glaciers, studied climate change, and something that I love science. I always have loved science, and I'm still a scientist at heart. But one of the things I realized as a scientist is that scientists study problems, whereas engineers are the ones that solve them. So once I realized that, it was a very easy switch for me to shift to become an engineer. And I had the background and training for it. But one of the things I didn't know at the time was that, a career in technology is really diverse. There's so many different careers, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. And so I'm going to start at a very, very high level and talk about some of the different paths or different large categories of career paths within technology. And this is where some of you on the call might have some suggestions of additional categories or things like that. This kind of lumps a bunch of things together, but basically you can go into more of the software development side of things, where you're actually coding and developing software. There's the graphic design side, the user experience side, and we're going to break down each one of these categories a little bit. The data analytics side, project management, more of an IT or infrastructure type, and then there's like what I would lump together as like game development, AR, and VR. And which of these career paths is right for you kind of depends on who you are. So, are you more analytical, more left brain, more mathematical and scientific thinking? You're more calculating, you're more logical, versus the right brain, where you're more creative. It's more about passion. It's more about artistic ability, so forth. Most of us are both of these, right? We probably lean one way or the other, but we're all, we all have two sides of our brain, and they're active. And what's interesting is I actually had a good friend of mine who was very right-brained to me. He was very artistic, he painted, very creative. And he told me that when he writes, he prefers to type, because he felt that when he was typing, he was using both sides, it was activating both sides of his brain more evenly, and his writing became more even than if he were to just write, which he was left-handed, which uses the right side of your brain. If he was writing, he would write more creatively, but it was like only using half of his brain. And when he typed, he felt like he was using both halves of his brain. And I think that, like I see Damien nodding his head. As coders, we've got both hands on the keyboard and we're coding and we're coming up, we're maybe more thinking very analytically of a solution, but also we have to be creative to figure out how to solve it. I had somebody ask me yesterday, they're like, how hard is coding? And I said, the language itself is simple, right? Programming languages are the easiest languages you'll ever learn in your life. They're very simple, have very simple structures, very simple rules. It's if this, then that is the gist. But it's what code do I write? How do I write the code to solve the problem? And that's where you have to be not just analytical, but creative as well. So a lot of these, I'll just jump back real quick. A lot of these require both sides of the brain. Some more than other, like graphic designer is definitely more on the creative side, whereas, something like project management is more on the analytical side, let's say. So, each person knows who they are, which side they fall more. Are they more analytical? Are they more creative? Then this is, which is right for you. So I'm going to jump into them, not in the same order in which they were in the slide. I'm leaving software engineering till last because I have the most to say about that for sure. But I want to start with graphic design. And, so within graphic design, you have people who work on more strictly on print design, right? Like designing these packages here at the, at the supermarket, right? Designing your marketing materials, your flyers and things like that, business cards, etc. Then there's graphic designers that work more on user interfaces, designing the systems that we use, whether it's a mobile application, whether it's a website, or even like the dashboard on your car would be a user interface that a UI person could design. There's 3D modeling, which, some 3D modelers will actually start in clay or work with 3D figures and then go to the computer and model it there. Some just use, just use the computer to 3D model, and you can model anything, for you guys have all seen like the car commercials where you're like, whoa, how did they get the car to look so perfect like that? It's probably a perfect 3D model of the car that's rendered, all the way, to like modeling things for games. And now with 3D printers, a lot of people are 3D modeling parts and then printing them and then using those parts in manufacturing or various other things. There's character design for whether it's for animation or for games or for even just for companies have mascots sometimes. There's and animation. And animation could be anything. It could be character animation. It could even be just like animating small little things in a user interface to make it more interactive, or what we call micro animations or micro interactions. So lots and lots of different stuff in the graphic design field. And then very closely related to that, but also very different, is user experience design. So user experience design is not necessarily designing what it looks like and putting the polish and shine on it, but how is a user going to interact with this system? What should those interactions, in which ways should they interact? How best can we build out those interactions? Make it simple, make it accessible, and so forth. So even just within UX, you have user experience designers, you have researchers, right? People who are just doing the research, interviewing users, finding out, where the pain points are. There's also IDX or interface design, and also accessibility is a really big thing. How to make systems usable by people with disabilities or certain needs, or with other devices that are non-standard. And then, getting into data analytics is exploding. In fact, it's becoming increasingly difficult to get a job in graphic design or in marketing, especially where you don't have some data analytics background. Increasingly, more and more of these jobs are requiring data analytics. And so data analytics to me, I mean, it's way more than just these four here, but just to try and simplify it a little bit, business intelligence is kind of the beginnings, I would say. So every company is gathering data, every company is collecting data, whether, customer data, shopping, visits to their website, interactions with their mobile app, etc. And in a business intelligence, somebody who does business intelligence, they're looking at that data and they're analyzing what's happened in the past and creating a picture of that, or what's happening right now. There's this many users on our website, or over the past 30 days, here's how many users we've had to our website. What have people been buying? How much have they been spending? What percent are they converting at from number of users to our site to number of people who are actually purchasing, etc. So that's business intelligence, is kind of looking back. It's the past. Data analytics and data science is more looking forward. It's taking that information from the past and converting it into knowledge and saying, okay, how can we, based on this data from the past, how can we create a model that can help us predict the future? So looking back at your customers and seeing what are the traits that these customers had who are more likely to spend a lot, or which of our customers are more likely to cancel their subscription, and then trying to predict in the future which of the, who those customers are based on their traits. Oh, these customers exhibit similar traits to these customers, so they're the ones who are likely to churn. Let's reach out to them and maybe offer them a special discount or a special offer or some free training or something to try and retain them. So that's kind of the big difference. Business intelligence is looking back. The data analytics, data science is more looking forward. And then we add in artificial intelligence, which is kind of central to a lot of the ability to look forward. Artificial intelligence, though, is its own field, and it's growing like wild right now. In fact, we're working here at Boca Code, we're working with 4 separate companies that are here in South Florida that are doing AI. So we have a couple of clients, and we're also helping advise for some companies. And over the next 18 months, we already have courses on data analytics and AI, but we're actually developing out like full curriculum just on more on the artificial intelligence side, because it's in such high demand here in South Florida. So this is a really interesting area. There's lots to be done. Just one example of that, we're working with a company called Imanico, a young founder named Saida Florexel, and she's trying to help the deaf community, the deaf and hard of hearing community. And what's interesting is there's a million apps. If you're deaf and you want to walk up and talk to somebody, you can have an app on your phone that does text to speech, that does speech to text. So you basically are getting live captions of what that person's saying. And if you hold your phone right, you can kind of look at them, see their face, and look down and see what they're saying without having to fully read their lips, but you could kind of see their expression, just like when you watch closed captions in a movie. The problem is when you walk into a room or into an area where there's 4 or 5 people talking, it's very difficult for somebody who's deaf to be able to watch 4 or 5 people try and read their lips and try and read the captions, especially when it's one microphone, all the text is coming out just as a block, and you can't see who's saying what. So it's very difficult. And a lot of times a deaf person in that situation will just kind of nod and pretend they understand what's going on, but really they don't, or they just won't participate. So we're helping her develop an app. We actually are in the last few weeks of it should be going to market next month, that actually separates that speech by the person's voice and creates speech bubbles of who the speaker is. So that's using artificial intelligence to do that. And that's just a very, it's a very visual and easy to understand example of artificial intelligence, but there's much more complex examples. So like we're working with a company that's actually using medical data and genetics data to do early detection of rare childhood diseases. And so some really cool stuff happening in that space. Another area of technology is project management. And this is an area, there are a lot of jobs in this. Several people on this call have probably worked in this space at one point or another. You can be a project manager. There's other roles below that, or I shouldn't say below that, literally like here on the slide below that. But there's Scrum Master, which is somebody who works directly with like a development team, and they kind of are. I put this GIF here because they're kind of like the cheerleaders, like go team go, but also trying to keep the team following agile principles or Scrum principles, and that's their job, is to like make sure the team is like, hey, wait, is this agile? Is this what we should be doing? But otherwise, they're kind of a cheerleader. So it's an interesting kind of position. Oftentimes, those people are developers themselves and are working on the same project. There's a product owner who kind of represents the client to the development team, and so they'll be the one who talks to the client, comes back, and then represents the client's interests with the developers. There's a bunch of other roles within project management. These are very interesting, more on the analytical side, organization side. Very cool though. Then there's IT, which it's funny. I'm very biased because I did this when I was in high school. I did a lot of this work freelancing, and I kind of swore I would never do it again. And I was offered a job several years ago where they wanted me to take over as CTO of this company. And I looked at what their current CTO was doing, and he was doing all these great things. And he was also he wore so many hats, including like getting under people's desks and wiring them up to the network and connecting their printers and installing printer drivers. And I was like, no, I'm not, we can hire a high school student to do that. But, there are some very high level people that work in IT that do network administration, systems analysts, tech support, cloud infrastructure, all kinds of things. And, the tech support can be much more advanced than, helping your user find the any key. And then, one other that I wanted to talk about, the AR, VR game development side of things, which I've been very fortunate to get to do a lot of these projects over the years. These are always fun to work on. But I talk to people all the time. This is like that one of those dream jobs. It seems like every little girl wants to be a marine biologist, and every little boy wants to be a game developer. I don't know why the gender disparity there, but there's in marine biology, there's like one job for every 1,000 graduates. And in game development, it can feel like that a little bit too. So there are paths, and actually I'm teaching next week. I'm teaching an entire course on game development, A to Z, everything about game development, design, behavior, physics, lighting, sound, everything. We build multiple games, test them in VR and in 3D and 2D, everything. At the end of the week, you go home with several games that you've built and the knowledge to take them to the next level and build more. And also, like, one of the things we talk about are ways to break into the game development industry, because it's kind of like marine biology, where it can be hard to get that first job. But one thing that a lot of people don't realize who want to go into game development is there's so many pieces to it. And very few of these that you see here actually require programming. So there's design, like level design, game design, designing like different elements within a game. There's the behavior. The behavior is where sometimes some programming could come in, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's literally just building out models like flow diagrams. Game physics, which sometimes we just use an existing engine, sometimes we build our own, sometimes we modify them. So there can be coding there or not. Lighting, camera work, sound engineering, and then, and then another one that I don't have here is shaders. Shaders requires a lot of coding, which is interesting, but it's essentially how light interacts with the various objects in the game. And so it's very interesting how some of these things, you can have a game like Flappy Birds where it's a single person that built the whole thing, start to finish. But then you also have these games where you've got, they're like movies where, the credits roll for, for 7 minutes when you finish the game, because there's so many different people in so many different facets. So, if my son, one of my sons or daughter, or if my daughter told me that they wanted to go into game development, I would explore this with them and see where their interest was. Maybe it's just in sound engineering, right? So there's all these different ways to be involved in game development that don't all require programming, like the field of software development. So this is the final area that I wanted to talk about today. My favorite of them is the area of software development. And we're, as a boot camp here at Boca Code, as a code school, we're approaching teaching of technology a little bit different than some of the other code schools that I'm familiar with, where they kind of focus on web development. What we're trying to do here at Boca Code is really teach people to be software engineers, which is a much more comprehensive field. But I want to start with web development just to start, which is a subset of software engineering. So when we talk about web development, we can break it down. There's a lot of different types of developers, but this usually starts with front-end developers. So a front-end developer is somebody who builds that interface that that the user interacts with, right? They're building the website, they're building the app, the part though that the user interacts with. And using Damien introduced me to this great guy, Joel Lord. And Joel Lord had this great analogy where he compares it to a restaurant, right? Where the front end of the restaurant is the dining room where you walk in and that's what you want the customer to see. And then the back end is the kitchen. That's where all the action's going. That's where things are being made. And the same thing is true with developing a website or a web or mobile application. The front end is the dining room. That's what the user sees. The back end is the kitchen. And there are some developers who really just like to work on that back end. In fact, Michelle, who's by my side here, when she started out, she was just a back end developer working at NextEra Energy. And one day they told her, they're like, hey, we need you to start working on the front end. We're starting a front end team. You're going to learn React. So she taught herself React and became a front end developer. And now she's very well versed in both front end and back end, and in fact is gone on to teach front end development and become one of the premier React developers that I would say in the state of Florida. Then there's people who do both, which I put in quotes as a full stack developer, right? Full stack meaning they do the front and the back. But I put it in quotes because some people call that full stack, but there's pieces that are missing to really be a full stack developer. And one of those pieces that some people think you need is this, what's called DevOps. And DevOps is, there's a lot to DevOps, but essentially, you could kind of break it into a couple different pieces. DevOps is being able to take that website or application and put it into the cloud in a way where it's highly available, highly scalable, anyone can access it from anywhere. And where it's going to be rock solid, it's going to be secure, it's going to it's going to scale automatically, things like that. And that's part of it. Another part is making it so that the developers can easily deploy new versions of the website or application to that infrastructure. So it's putting that infrastructure, putting the site in that infrastructure, and making it easy for the developers not only to roll out new features, but if there's a problem, to quickly roll back to a previous version. So those are just some of the things that a DevOps engineer does. And it's interesting talking to Michelle. She was saying that she's worked with groups where the DevOps people kind of see themselves as like the gatekeepers and can kind of hold things hostage and hold things over people's heads in certain situations. And I've seen that, and it, so I think to be a real full stack developer, which is the last one I have here on the list, you really need to be able to do it all, right? To be able to do front end, back end, and DevOps. And that's the ideal. But then there's more, okay? There's also what I call a web editor patent pending. Okay, this is a phrase a term I've coined that I'm hoping will catch on. That this refers to these people that and there's a lot of them out there, and some of really talented people that build sites with WordPress or Wix or Squarespace, things like that. And frankly, I don't want to do those projects. So I'm very happy that there are people out there that are what I call like these web editors that work on projects like that. And I work closely with several of them because for certain clients, that's the way to go. You get mobile developers like Jonathan Sanchez, who's on the call. He's a very, very talented mobile developer, been building mobile applications for several years. There's desktop applications, right? Like I'm using Keynote here, which is a desktop application. So some people, they don't, you can be a developer, but not necessarily build for the web. You can build for mobile, you can build for desktop. You can even build for embedded systems. Like there's actually software in, almost every device that we have, like from a smartwatch to, your coffee maker has software in it, right? Your microwave, right? Those are more embedded systems. So people who write software for those kind of systems. There's also database analysts, database architects. There's systems architects, which when you get far enough along in your career, you tend to, a systems architect is not somebody who's like straight out of school. This is usually somebody who has a lot of experience, has built a lot of systems before. Although we've been talking here at Boca Code among the team about offering an advanced course in systems architecture. And we're going to be working that into our career course for our software engineers as well. So, one of the interesting things when you look at the, median annual salaries from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, you could see that, on average, all jobs, the median salary is about $40K a year. For web developers, it's closer to 75. And then you go network administrators, computer programmers, database administrators, and then the real software engineer, which has, interestingly, the mean and the median salary in South Florida is right about the same, about 108K per year. And so that's what we're training people to do here in South Florida, because these jobs are really heavily needed here in South Florida. There's about a 4-to-1 ratio between the number of jobs and the number of candidates that we have for those jobs here in South Florida. But even within software engineering, there's so many other things. So we went through like the web developers, and some of these application developers, DevOps, architecture, embedded systems, but also like game development, data analysts, and machine learning. There's big data and AI. So some of these things that I mentioned in some of the other categories, but there's also testing, quality control, and something I forgot to put on here, which is security, like cybersecurity, which is a very big and very important field, especially and honestly only becoming more and more important. It's an interesting one because it's one of those fields where, back in like the 1950s, right? You'd graduate from like the Wharton School of Business and you'd go to New York City and you'd see the job boards, and they're all looking for people, with 7 year, entry level position, only 5 years experience needed, 7 years experience needed, and how do you get that experience? There was always that conundrum. And in cybersecurity, it's also one of those fields today where I see that there's a lot of difficulty where when you go through and you get this training to be this cybersecurity expert, And then nobody wants a junior cybersecurity person, right? They all want that cybersecurity person who's stopped the threats, hardened the systems, done this all before. They want somebody with experience. So what I often recommend is that if that's the field you want to go into, study one of these other areas, learn that where there's jobs where you can maybe get in as a junior, work security into your job, and then continue to build upon that so you get the experience in security and eventually can move just into that field. And that's the case with other things too, like game development. I became a game developer just because I had years and years of experience of being a software engineer, and I'd built several games. And then people started coming to me because they knew the quality of coding that I could do. So I didn't just like try right off the bat to get a job at some big gaming company. But again, there's all kinds of ways and various ways of getting your foot in the door. um, Software developer jobs are growing right now 21% annually. It's just it's massive. There's huge growth in this area, and the candidates are not keeping pace. So I said there's like a 4-to-1 ratio right now of jobs to candidate. And but the thing is the number of jobs are growing much faster than the number of candidates. So it's really is a hot area. Now, again, this doesn't, you talk to someone like a Damian Montero who's on this call, or a Todd Albert that have been doing this for many, many years. And for us, finding a job is very easy because we have the experience. That doesn't mean that when you're first starting out, it's really easy. It definitely can be challenging there. So I just want to make sure to paint a clear picture that for that first job can be a little tricky to get. But once you have that experience, it gets very easy. And that's something, we're working with a lot of local companies who need the developers so that as our students graduate, they can walk right into them. And something we're also doing here at Boca Code, which you might have picked up on as I'm talking about our clients, is we're working with a lot of local companies. Jonathan and Michelle and Mariella and myself and Ashley, we're actually building products for some of the local companies. We're helping them with their software development needs so that we're working on real projects and our students can work on real projects. Our students in our career course will get to actually contribute code to real products for real companies and get it reviewed by our senior staff, get it rejected by our senior staff, show them, yeah, that works, but there's a better way to do it. Let's look at that. And that's how you really learn. And that's how you're really prepared to get out into the real world and get a job. So our graduates will actually have like actual companies, projects to put on their resume. And some of those companies, as they grow, are going to look back at our graduates and say, oh, you worked on my app when it was just starting. Now I want you to build this and that for it, right? Because they'll already be familiar with the code base. So it's kind of, it's a great foot in the door opportunity. And there's other benefits to careers in technology, right? Than just salary and availability of jobs, but a lot of times there's a lot of flexibility. I mean, look at all of us on this call here at, 10:45 on a Friday Friday morning. We're all here on this call because we're all in jobs that are very flexible, right? There's like I said, there's high demand, very low unemployment. And in many of our fields, especially in software development, you get, there's this like 13% bump when you go from your first to your second job in salary, which is huge. It's much larger than in a lot of others. And so getting back to, okay, so which is right for you, is if you're changing careers like I did. I was a professor. I was a climate scientist and geography professor. So my first job in technology, coming from academia, was working with a real estate company. They needed help with mapping, right? And here I was teaching that. I was teaching mapping and GIS, and I was like, oh yeah, I could solve that problem easily. So play to your strengths, right? Like Pat, who's on this call, he's a teacher. He's been a teacher for well, I don't want to embarrass you, Pat, but for many, many years. So for him, like going into, ed tech is a very, very easy transition, right? So, basically like take your previous career, if you're changing careers, plus tech, that's a great, great field to get into. So just, if you want some extra training in this, obviously, at Boca Code, we offer a lot of training. Pat said Pat's been in it for far too long, and hopefully not for much longer, Pat. Um, so I mentioned our career course, our software engineering career course. The next one starts on January 11th. It's a 10-week course, and you really, learn everything as a software engineer. We also offer intro to advanced short courses. So we have short courses that can take you from beginning all the way up to advanced. And in fact, Michelle, who's this like rock star, senior engineer, she took one of our courses. She was a student at Boca Code before she was faculty. So we have, next week we have our game development course that covers AR and VR. We have a course on Django and Python in January. One of our two most popular courses are the Intro to JavaScript and Node.js, followed by the front end development with React. It's kind of a bundle where you learn how to build the back end, how to build the front end. You put it together, deploy it, everything, full stack application. Nestled in the week between those two courses is a UX course. We do our data analytics course where you do Python and artificial intelligence. And we also have a mobile development course. So these are just a few of the courses that we're going to be teaching, the first half of the year. And we've got just like this ridiculous team. So I mentioned Michelle, who was most recently at NextEra Energy. She's one of our lead developers and instructors, as well as Mariella, who I've worked with for several years. I've been fortunate to know them both for several years and have this really awesome team. Jonathan, who's on this call, is more on the mobile development side. Emily is our lead instructor for the UX courses. She's incredible. Ashley is kind of a jack of all trades. She's been doing this as long as I have. She had her first company when she was 15 years old and has done, work for Disney and NCR. If you've ever used an ATM or you've used like a automatic checkout system at like Target, she built that. And work with Ashley Taylor, who heads up our marketing team. I've worked with Ashley for years, and then there's me. So that's that's the quick and dirty of it, and open it up to questions. But and hopefully you guys will all check us out at at bocacode.com.
Yeah, thanks for that, Todd. I feel like I learned a whole new window of different opportunities in tech because, from the outside perspective, you only hear um, software developer, UX, UI designer, full stack developer, but I was glad to see the data analytics is kicking in and all of that. But yeah, kind of what George said, terrific presentation. I do have some questions. If anybody else has
Please.
any questions, please feel free to write in the chat. And I'm also going to check social media. And yeah, feel free to take yourself off mute. I mean, this is such a open discussion and we don't have Todd for much
Yeah, and
longer. So
I'm sure there's also like plenty of people on this call that might be thinking like, hey, you forgot this or you forgot that. There's lots of others, and please feel free to share those, because there's probably people on the call that might be interested. I like I said, I painted with a very with broad strokes. So I'm sure there's lots of others that I left out, like cybersecurity, which I gotta run back and add to the slides.
yeah, so I did have a question, and 2021 is coming along, and that's usually the year or New Year's when everyone starts transitioning and trying to learn new skills. How would you recommend the process? Let's say if someone has a full-time job but wants to learn something on the side, like maybe it's data analytics or cybersecurity, like how can they transition without getting too overwhelmed?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and I think there's you actually kind of asked two separate questions, even though I don't know that you intended to, but
Mhm.
you're like, how can they get started? And then you said, how can they transition without being overwhelmed? And I
Mhm.
think those are actually two different questions, right? Because oftentimes the way to get started is online, right? And people who know that I run an in-person code school are probably shocked to hear me say that like there's tons of free or really inexpensive classes that you can take online. Most of our students, yeah, George, we do give certificates for our courses. All of our courses come with a certificate, as long as you successfully complete the course. Um, a lot of code school students actually come from learning online, and the most successful ones oftentimes start online. So very few of our some of our students come to us and they're like, hey, I know nothing, teach me, right? And that's totally fine. We love those students just as much as the students who've maybe gotten a start online. But what happens is, and I'm sure there are several of us on this call that know people like this, is they get hooked on these online tutorials, and they take an online tutorial, and then they take another one, and they take another, and they get caught in this loop, and they still don't really have this like cohesive picture of how to create a career. So the question of where to start, online's great as a place to start, but how to do it seamlessly, and I forget the word you used, but painless, like with the least amount of pain. I forget the exact adverb you used. But like if you're working full time, having a having a code school where you can, and listen, learning is different for everyone. Some people reading a book, that's the way to learn. Some people watching YouTube tutorials is the way to learn. But a lot of, I'm seeing a subset of people, because the people who learn best from a book are going to a book. The people who learn best online are going online. The other people are coming to me and they're saying, I want to learn in person. I want to learn from you. I want to sit in the room with you, which, I'm not wearing a mask just for this talk, but we wear, we're being very careful, wearing masks, staying 6 feet apart. But my students, for the most part, are wanting to come in person and learn. And we're very, just the same way that when I work with a client, I don't want to just build them an app and then say, here's your app. I want to build them an app that's market ready, right? So when I teach you a skill, when you come to me to Boca Code, whether you come at night, you're working full time and you just take some night classes, when you come to me, I want you to learn that skill to a point where you can now either apply it to your job or put it into your resume and start attacking, going after jobs in that area. So that's I mean, that's a little bit of a plug for Boca Code, of course, or code schools in general, but I think that for some people that is the best way.
Yeah. Okay, and I see we have another question in the chat from George. Do companies send employees as apprentices to you for training? Is this an opportunity, lucrative area for Palm Beach Tech to develop? So that's a question
Well,
for both of us.
yeah, I was going to say the second part of that question for you, Monica.
Mhm.
The first part is yes, we are talking with several companies, and we have had a couple of people, like, when I did the data analytics course, we had a couple of people take it that were working full time and had their companies pay for them to take the course. We are trying to establish some relationships. We're working with City Furniture. We were about to, do a whole training program for them, and then COVID hit and they locked down. But yeah, this is definitely something that we're offering and have done some of already. And the Palm Beach Tech, though, I'll let you handle that, Monica.
Yeah, and George, thanks for asking that, because we're always looking for ways to bring more value, and even something like this. Something about Palm Beach Tech that we get asked a lot is, how are you connecting the startup companies, new companies, with some of the Fortune 500 companies that we have within our organization? So I think that would be a great way to develop it and kind of look into it for 2021, because I mean, Todd's like a genius. So he could definitely help some of our Fortune 500 companies and different companies develop. So George, that's something we could definitely look into. Is there, are you part of any of the companies at Palm Beach Tech, perhaps, George? And then Ken also said it's not also just coding, product owner, manager, program manager, scrum master. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so Ken, we're not currently teaching dedicated courses on project management and so forth. We are teaching the data analytics, and we're going to be building out that curriculum even further. And then in our career course, we're also weaving in things like project, like agile is a big, is part of what we're teaching to our software engineers. So they're going to be getting Scrum and Agile, and they're going to be working in teams with our instructors, not just like small groups like you usually do, but like small groups that are led by our instructional staff. Well, some of both. And so they're going to actually be applying, these project management, Agile, and Scrum principles. But we don't currently, that's not one of our specialties to teach that. Despite it is needed.
Yeah, and to add on to that, we did get a comment on Facebook about cloud, learning the ins and outs of cloud. So that'd be really cool to look into as well.
We are adding a cloud course in 2021. So we're going to be teaching a course on cloud, which will include AWS, Azure, some Azure, and some Google Cloud, because that's also, I serve on the Tech Talent Committee, as you probably know, Monica, and so I'm meeting with CTOs, CIOs, CEOs of all these these companies that are, and they're detailing what are the needs in South Florida, and we're trying to we are, I should say, developing our curriculum around those needs.
Right. And Jason in the comments said, as cloud is just a buzzword for someone else's computer.
Exactly. I think Damien has a sticker of that sort on his laptop. He'd show you, but his camera doesn't flip around to the back.
Exactly.
Yeah, what's that, Damien?
I think he said exactly.
Exactly.
But it's cool voice. Exactly.
Yeah. There you go.
So I agree completely. One of the things I wanted to add, as George was mentioning, is cloud only DevOps. Would you like to talk about that? When we talk about cloud.
Right. So it is and it isn't, right? So on one sense, cloud is, it's not just DevOps, but it's also the architecture, right?
Exactly.
How do, like, for someone like, a senior developer like Damien, whenever a project comes to your, in front of you, you have to figure out, okay, how am I going to architect this? What pieces are going to go where, including what cloud technologies can I leverage? And so that's one of the things in our architecture course that we're going to be covering. We're going to do a cloud and we're going to do a cloud course and an architecture course, but they would probably be really good bundle to offer. So thanks for joining us, Scott. I know you got to run. Yeah, I agree, Damien. It's not just DevOps. There's so many parts of the cloud. Although, like, you look at something like AWS that has 500 different products they offer, and most developers probably only use like 5 or 6 of those, right?
100%.
So yeah, so we'll in that course we're going to cover what are all the products and what do they mean, and then go into detail in those key ones that are most likely to be used. And same thing with similar with Azure and Google Cloud, and maybe a little bit of Firebase as well.
Absolutely. And I am a senior developer. I have over 21 years of experience, but the other day I had to rely on Todd to help me with Google Cloud. A customer wanted that, and he is the expert with that. And so...
Not the expert. maybe have some expertise. Since Damien cut out, I'll finish your sentence for you.
Yeah, it looks like he's so frozen. All right.
Yeah.
I
and
am.
Always
we
happy to help out.
We have one more question. We have time for one more. Maria Dominguez, what base knowledge do you need to do the data analytics course?
The data analytics course is it's actually kind of, even though it's kind of a more advanced course where I get a lot of developers that take it, and a lot of people that do data analytics take it. I think, if you're, the best way to describe it is, you need to be proficient, somewhat proficient with computers. And I would say, like, even though we don't use Excel, having like that knowledge, being able to like write an Excel formula, if you're at that level, it doesn't have to be that specific Excel writing a formula. But if you're at that level, you can succeed in the data analytics course. We don't, because people come to it from so many different angles that I don't have like a specific set of knowledge as a prerequisite. But we do move quickly, so you have to be computer proficient. You can't be like, where do I find the any key? You've got to be able to move quickly and keep up.
Awesome. Well, it looks like we're right on time. Thanks again, Todd. It's always a pleasure to have you join us. I will be sending out a follow-up email. So Todd, if you want to include your presentation for that, I can go ahead and do so. But in the meantime, I hope that everybody has a happy holiday season and, stay safe and healthy. And Todd, if you have any last words too, you can go ahead and share too.
Just, have a great New Year, guys. If I don't see you in my game development course next week, I'll see you in January.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody again. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Happy holidays. And happy New Year.
Great presentation.
Bye.
Thank you, Todd.
Thanks, Damien.
Hey, Damien, I like those background.
I was trying to hide the mess behind it. My apologies. It looks bad. I'm not trying to do that. I was trying to hide the fact that there's a ladder there, and sorry. That's what in my mind I was like, perfect. I'll hide it with a sign, and then it's like it's not a